Hello world, I'm Robin Catling and this is Write On. Join me in my author journey as I delve into the craft of writing, bringing you tools, tips and lessons learned the hard way so you don't have to. A strong opening chapter. A question or an obsession. How do I write a strong opening chapter? How do I hook the reader and keep them turning the page? I spend more time on opening chapters than anything else. Here's my compilation of tips from writers and coaches from the last 3 years. 1. The opening as a short story. The opening chapter has a lot of work to do. Genre setup, character introductions, outlining the initial problem, setting the tone, laying out the promises of the story to come. It better be brief, coherent, and engaging. No pressure. One method is to treat your first chapter as a very open-ended short story. The short story form efficiently launches into character, dilemma, setting, and plot with no waste. The short story tells us every important thing we need to know about character, both internally and contextually. An opening chapter can do the same job in 2,000 to 4,000 words. If we treat the opening chapter as a short story, we can apply the MICE quotient: milieu, ideas, characters, events. How many story elements can you include in chapter 1? Do they adequately brief the whole story? What's your word budget? Supplementary. Think of page 1 as an open-ended short story. More on that in the future. 2. Prioritize. Show us the characters, their emotional state, and something of their dilemma or opening problem. The world building, setting, or environment matter only as far as they influence character. You can hint at the larger world and the big picture plots to come later on. Readers keep reading for relatable characters. 3. Create empathy. Make us care. Nobody cares about anything that happens in the plot unless we're engaged with characters at the center of it. For that, we need a main character who is relatable and empathetic. They can be hero, anti-hero, or ordinary Joe or Jane. They don't have to be likable from the get-go. Give the reader someone compelling, even if they appear to be a villain like Ebenezer Scrooge. Lizzie Bennet has wit, wisdom, and plenty of 19th century sass to go with her moral dilemma about marriage. 4. Set out the stakes. Once we know who the characters are, we have to understand the stakes. What do they have to win or lose in the course of the story? It doesn't have to be life or death. The Bennet girls have no inheritance if Mr. Bennet dies. Financially sound marriages are vital. 5. Character voice. Establish character voice at the beginning. The big draw of Catcher in the Rye is Holden Caulfield's character voice. Regardless of point of view, a distinctive character is engaging and memorable. It can be rebellious, pompous, witty, gentle, laconic, sarcastic, just make it distinct. Bland is a writing sin. 6. Enter late. Common writing advice is enter late, leave early. Readers have a low attention span. They won't stick around through a chapter of waking up, getting dressed, brushing teeth, and eating breakfast. Cut the mundane and the boring. Throw a grenade on page 1. Boom. In Pride and Prejudice, there's no ordinary world. Within a few pages, we get news of the rich tenant moving into Netherfield. There's little room for backstory at the beginning. Hints and clues at most. It's not a time for long digressions and flashbacks. All of that can come later, after you engage the reader. 7. Flirt with the reader. Austen's opening line of Pride and Prejudice, yes, collect a sticker, is one of the greatest flirtations with the reader in literature. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. This has wit, satire, elegant construction, humour, and a hint of the conflict or stakes to come. It sets the tone for Lizzie Bennet's character voice and outlines the central theme of the novel. 8. Don't lie. The opening chapter has to declare the story type and genre. The novel has to deliver on the title and blurb. See Sanderson's Promises, Progress and Payoffs. Sanderson describes a novel that opened as a cliché fantasy and pivoted halfway through to subvert what went before. Most readers didn't reach the ingenious pivot to catch the joke. Those genre fans who stuck with it hated the undercut. Lying to the reader in the opening, then hitting them with a huge genre twist down the line, is a gamble likely to fail. 9. Show proactivity. The character has to come alive on page 1. The opening chapter has to show characters in motion, doing something interesting from the start. Passive characters have to express dissatisfaction or yearn for change in the ordinary world setup. Ideally, it opens with them pursuing a goal and meeting obstacles. Best of all, on page 1. 10. Don't delay the opening hook. Time was, the opening hook appeared 3 or 4 chapters in. Not anymore. The hook has to appear in chapter 1. I'd say the opening hook for Pride and Prejudice is the new tenant of Netherfield. In Star Wars, not a book, I know, it's Leia sending the Death Star plans with the 2 droids. In Heart of Darkness, Marlowe receives orders to track down Kurtz. Conrad's novella has a low word budget and jumps straight into the plot. 11. Minimize detail. The opening chapter mustn't overwhelm the reader with too much plot, too many characters, or too much world building. What's important and necessary at the start. Tease and defer everything else. There's plenty of room in the next 100,000 words. Austen walks a tightrope in the opening chapter of Pride and Prejudice. 2 parents, 5 sisters, the inheritance problem, the Netherfield tenant, social mores, and the marriage challenge. That's a lot to include. We get minimal detail about it, but lots of hints of what comes later. 12. Be specific, be original. Lay out your initial promises and make them good ones. In a world of flat-pack, cookie-cutter romance, thriller, action, fantasy and mystery, the opening has to say something distinctive and compelling. At a time where every story already exists, originality is in short supply. What makes this story unique and worth reading? A different take, a new genre mix, a compelling voice, character, opening problem. Philip Reeve's The Mortal Engines begins with Cities on Wheels, a distinct take on dystopian YA, Mad Max, steampunk adventure. Okay, it turns into Star Wars at the end, but the opening setup is brilliant. Not rules, but guidelines. I haven't mentioned prologues, flashbacks, and time skips for the opening. These are all tricky ways to begin and break all kinds of rules outlined previously. 2 of my stories use flash forwards, another minefield. These are all guidelines or principles. Some are contradictory. How do you reconcile minimize detail and be specific? I assert you can learn from them and from examples, but no one can teach you to apply them. You have to sit down and write, and that's what's taking me so long. That's all for this time. Thanks for stopping by. You can like and subscribe to the channel, or go to robincatling.info to check out the blog.